But when push came to shove and it was time to cash out, those funds were actually not accessible, and that those returns were non-realized and non-existent, basically.
You can tell me, Fernando, just a general story that someone invested in cryptocurrency, and finally this went horribly wrong. Do you want to just share the general outline of like this the what you encountered?
Yeah, just keeping it again very
vague,
very vague and very general. Someone unfortunately was sold the idea of exceptional returns, and I'm saying exceptional for the time that we were in. This is pre kind of major downturn, and so like the expectation of even a 10% return seemed lackluster, underwhelming, right? And so was being sold something that was obviously much more opportunistic. We later found out that
we're talking six figures, good money.
Yeah, we're talking a good chunk of change.
It's not $500. Is my point.
It's yeah, and unfortunately, statements also suggested that things were going exceptionally well, but when push came to shove and it was time to cash out, they found out that those funds were actually not accessible, and that those returns were non-realized and non-existent, basically.
The funds didn't exist.
The funds didn't exist, and now to the point where even the initial capital is gone, or is at risk, however we want to call it. It's still, to be honest, in the works. But these are just unfortunate circumstances that are it's caused by like a mania. It's a mania of people. It's like a herd mentality when people start to
slow down.
You have to slow down. I mean, like we
everything is
hard.
so fast now, right? Like you sort of can't get control of it. It's I don't know. I sometimes I'm like, were my parents moving this fast? Like, where days are going by, a million things to do, emails, this, that, problems. Okay, investments. I mean, getting information. Okay, you got to decide by 5. Everything's on a delay, right? You got to decide. So what's your decision? Whoa. Why are we going so fast? What's the hurry? Yet everyone seems to be running all the time. It's because the tempo and the tempo of things and the accessibility to items. It's like you didn't punch out at 5. You know what I mean? Like I don't punch out on Saturdays. You know what I mean? Like it's because we have our phones and we're connected. Do you ever punch out?
Or do we ever punch out? You know what I mean? So it's like this perpetual thing. So it's normal that it kind of feels like you're on this treadmill that's going at 100, but slowing down to make these important decisions. You're buying a house. And for most people, this is the largest purchase that they'll ever make in their lives. Take a minute. Let's look at
take a few,
but it's just, you get caught up in this mania and you have to bid on it. You have to pay over asking. You have to, but that's a misconception that a lot of people have. And they're applying the same thing to the housing market as they are to their portfolio. We're going to miss out on this. It's FOMO on that. And what about that sector? And what about this? People are going into the doctor's office with self-diagnosed WebMD type. Take a minute, take a minute to cool things down. You make much better decisions coming from a standpoint of a cooler head and just reflection.
I mean, in most cases for me, when anything is rushed, it's never been, there was no real reason to rush. Most of the time our rushing and our hurrying is not something that's actually real. When you actually look back after the fact, there was actually no rush. It was really self-imposed. So I think that's a good point. Slow down. If you had to give 3 tips, let's say 3, 2, 1, choose a few to anyone that's starting off to start investing for their retirement, whether it be for retirement or for to build up some assets, to build an empire. Depending on every individual is different. What would be from your perspective, the top 3, let's say, advice or tips that you would give them?
The top 3 things that I think I would tell anyone who's starting out in investing is know yourself, right? If you're somebody who is impulsive or maybe disorganized, or you may need to have something systematized, right? Something that will be done on a pre-authorized basis, on a monthly basis, to avoid having you kind of get in your own way, basically. So understanding yourself and your own patterns as a person and as an investor, I would say understand that, so that can kind of guide you as to, well, do I need an advisor at this age? Maybe I don't have much money, but do I maybe need an advisor? Because I actually need an intermediary. I need somebody who's going to hold me accountable.
A buffer. And
stay in between me and my next bad decision, basically. That's column one. Column two is, maybe I am totally disciplined. Maybe I can be completely consistent. Maybe I'm okay with a budget and I can commit to X amount of dollars per month. If you are that person, my first suggestion would be, I guess this would be my second suggestion, is automate something on a monthly basis at a minimum. Consistency as soon as possible, as early on as possible in your lifetime. And you don't have to break your head thinking about, well, what do I buy and how do I buy it, and so on and so forth. A lot of the platforms that are accessible to the do-it-yourself investors or the self-directed brokerages, whether it's through your banking or through other applications.
Well, simple.
Exactly, of the world and stuff like that make it very simple for you to do so. Find a cost-effective basket like an ETF. I always reference the S&P 500 just because I think it's the best representation of overall economic,
economicness,
economicness, if we want to call it. No, but just overall economic health, I look at those 500 companies as kind of, the how are we doing,
Yeah. Your yearly checkup.
Yeah. And if you could buy that every single month, I have a hard time believing that, in 5 years or 10 years from now that those 500 companies are not doing well, especially knowing that those 500 companies are constantly being interchanged and that's happening automatically within the index. So long-winded answer: 1, know yourself. 2, create something a monthly type of disciplined and consistent approach to investing.
Yeah. I'll say 3.
3. I think,
It's always good to have 3. 2's never enough.
2's never enough. I guess I'm thinking about, it's funny because I'm thinking about young investors, and now I'm trying to think, because I don't have that many that are super young, like young enough to where it feels like a baby step almost.
Yeah. But let's say if they were, because so many people that listen to the podcast and that ask us questions, and we invite them to write to us and write questions on the podcast, or even if they're listening now to write their questions.
Yeah.
They want to sort of know, like, okay, so 1, set up something to be disciplined. 2, be consistent. And then 3
is selecting, in my opinion, and this has been
you're the only one here for now.
From a perspective of like globally, something that has hugely impacted me.
Yeah,
has been selecting a team of people, almost like a board of advisors, if you will, that you trust to help you with affairs. And what do I mean by that? It's not as fancy as it sounds, but I mean, the proper selection of your mortgage broker, the proper selection of your accountant, the proper selection of your lawyer, getting yourself acquainted with not just the individuals, but I mean the jargon that they use, right? The information that they have, their industries, because inevitably it will affect you, So bringing those people in as you're kind of building your wealth, whether it's a small amount or a large amount, I think it's important to start to cultivate those relationships because they do come in quite handy.